Planning and Zoning meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Alex Tomorrow is absent. Mark Denny.
Here.
Terry Burkowski.
Here.
John Matthews.
Here.
Jeff Spink.
Here.
Jeanette Lammy Holdeman is absent. Rocky Hempel.
Present.
Wolf Smith's absent. Myself, Steve Rosenthal, is present. We have 6 members present. Secretary's report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I just have 2 things to discuss for tonight. We're undergoing the comprehensive plan right now, so we have meetings coming up next week, October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. It's the charrette. So I would encourage you to attend one of the meetings. And also, I'd like to have a work session next month, starting at 5 o'clock, to discuss the golden factors and also the table of uses that will be coming before you.
Okay, well, I was glad because I was going to bring that up about the golden factors, having a review on that, and for our new members and refresher for the rest of us who've been here for a while. So, anything else?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
I make a motion to accept the agenda as printed. I'll second it.
Motion on the floor with a second to approve the agenda as printed. Any further discussion? Have a roll call vote of members present. Mark Danny.
Yes.
Terry Balkowski.
Yes.
John Matthews.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries 6-0. We'll start off with item number A. Case number DEV 19-083, consideration of rezone request for the County Road 1 corridor in Leavenworth County, Kansas. Request submitted by Planning and Zoning staff. This does require a public hearing. Staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This is case number DEV-19-083 of the proposed rezoning of the County Road 1 corridor. Staff is requesting the rezoning of the County Road 1 corridor. As most of you are aware, in 2018, a land use analysis was completed on the corridor, which was then adopted by the Board of County Commissioners with the future land use map. The rezoning area consists of approximately 9,600 acres, the majority of which is currently zoned as rural residential. The proposed zoning districts consist of planned low-density residential, planned medium-density residential, planned high-density residential, planned commercial, planned mixed use, planned industrial, rural residential 2.5 acre zoning, rural residential 5, and rural residential 40. The planned commercial, the planned districts that we're talking about, what that means is they would have to bring in a plan to us that would have to meet specific criteria. So it's a little different than some of the other zoning districts that we currently have. The proposed rezoning request is in conformance to the future land use map for the corridor, which was adopted by the Board of County Commissioners. The proposed rezoning will allow for economic development by simplifying the development process within the corridor. Again, that's part of the reason that we're proposing planned developments. So we'll go through the factors to be considered, which are the most important things to consider, as you all are aware. The character of the neighborhood. The area is primarily residential, rural in character with some residences. As everybody knows, in 2006, the County of Leavenworth, the City of Tonganoxie, and the Kansas Turnpike Authority partnered to build County Road 1 interchange at 222nd Street and I-70 with substantial public investment. The goal of the corridor was to increase economic development within the area. The number 2 is zoning and uses of nearby property. Primarily, the area is zoned as rural residential. A land use study, again, was completed in 2018, which shows the highest and best use of the corridor with regard to that substantial public investment that was made. Number 3 is suitability of the property for the uses to which it has been restricted. The current zoning does not allow for this corridor to be used to the highest and best use. Substantial public investment was utilized in order to construct the interchange with the goal of bringing economic development to the area. The current zoning does not promote economic development, nor does it capitalize on the substantial public investment. Extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. The area is not likely to be detrimentally impacted. The proposed rezoning would largely create substantially more economic and development opportunities than currently exist. It's also important to note that current uses could remain, even with the rezoning. So if it's used as a farm now, it would remain used as a farm. It's if somebody were to come in and want to use it to a higher use than farmland. So just to clarify that. Length of time the property has been vacant is zoned. The properties are not vacant. Some of the parcels have single-family homes, and most of them are used for agricultural. Relative gain to economic development, public health, safety, and welfare. The proposed use will provide an opportunity to bring economic development to the area in the form of residential, commercial, industrial, retail, and cultural opportunities. Conformance to the comprehensive plan. In 2018, the County Road 1 land use analysis was completed after a substantial public input. The proposed rezoning is in conformance to that plan, and staff recommendation is for the approval of this rezoning request. I will quickly go through the proposed rezoning districts. The next case we have, we'll have a little deeper conversation about that, but just to quickly go through it. Planned low-density residential is a low-density residential zoning district primarily for single-family homes. Generally, we would be looking at 4 units per acre, so 10,000 square foot lots. Planned medium-density residential is again a residential zoning district for single-family and two-family homes, generally 7 units per acre, Planned high-density residential would be apartments, duplexes, generally 11 units per acre. Planned mixed use is a zoning district which combines a mixture of residential, retail, office, cultural uses, and light industrial in a single structure or multiple structures, and each development would require a minimum of 2 or more uses. Planned commercial is a zoning district primarily for the development of commercial uses such as retail, entertainment, restaurants, etc. Planned industrial is a zoning district primarily for the development of industrial uses, and rural residential 40 is a zoning district primarily located within the floodplain where agricultural uses and preservation of natural riparian buffers is essential. We have the map pulled up. I believe all of you have a copy of the map. We'll answer any questions that you may have. Again, staff recommends approval of case number DEV-19-083, County Road 1 rezoning.
Jeff?
We had some questions about change in property taxes due to the rezoning, so I asked Mr. Weber, our county appraiser, to come and state some facts about if there will be any changes or not.
Good evening. Bob Weber, County Appraiser. I was asked to give some comments on zoning, what effects it have on property taxes. It's not just straightforward. There's several factors to consider here. First of all, property devoted to agricultural use is always valued and assessed as agricultural ground, regardless of zoning, regardless whether it's in the city or out of the city. Most of this ground is agricultural. As long as ground remains in agricultural, it doesn't matter if property right next to it is selling and developing for commercial purposes. As long as the property is used for agricultural purposes, it is appraised and assessed as agricultural land. If property is not devoted to agricultural purposes, if it's being used as such, then we are required to value it at market value and assess it according to its use. Market value will be determined by sales of like property. If it's zoned commercial and we have commercial sales in the area, it'll be valued as commercial ground. But it'll be classified as vacant until it's, until there's some commercial use going on the property. If it's there's a farm and a house on the property, property will still be appraised, the ag ground will still be appraised at agricultural ground, and the house will still be appraised as a house. Classification is the use of the property. Valuation, you can value property as commercial property, but the use can be different than what you're valuing at. You can have a house that's classified as commercial because it is being used as commercial. Or you can have a commercial building classified as residential because it's being used as residential. Classification determines assessment rate. So you have two things to come up with assessed value: the appraised value and the assessment rate. Commercial property is assessed at 25% of market value. Vacant lots, vacant land is assessed at 12% of market value. And residential property is assessed at 11.5% of market value. Do you have any questions?
I just so I make sure I understand it, and hopefully everybody understands it. So it doesn't matter how we rezone this property. It stays agricultural or residential, as it is used as now, until a commercial use would come. Right.
Right. We will, even if it's zoned commercial and it's not dedicated to agricultural,
Yeah.
we won't start looking at commercial values until we actually see property selling for commercial.
Right.
But if it's agricultural, it'll be agricultural.
Right.
It's
It
not
doesn't
used
matter
as
if it's in industrial zoning or commercial zoning. It does not matter as long as it's being used as agricultural. It's still being assessed as agricultural. Correct?
That is correct.
All right. Any questions?
I think I'd like to have one clarification made. Say if it's agricultural now, you sell it to a family member, you sell it to somebody else, it's they want to use it for agriculture, the land stays agricultural use, correct?
That is correct. That is state law. That is why state law was used. So it was written that way, so cities, as they encroached on areas, as uses changed, farmers still farm their property and not be taxed out of their property.
And that's kind of, it's a state thing, right? It's not
Yeah,
a
the
county
state.
thing, it's a state regulations.
Everything we do is regulated by state.
State, right. Anything else, anybody? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Stan? Upon opening the public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition will give your name and address each time you begin to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. And also remember, we are limited the public portion to 3 minutes per person. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. We will now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in favor of this request. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this request? We will now hear from those individuals present wishing to speak in opposition to this request. Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition?
I'm going to speak as a neutral party about that.
That's fine, just still state your name and address.
My name is Don Button, 19576 Evans Road. Thanks again for allowing me to be in front of the commission. For the matter of efficiency, I'm going to refer to my singular piece of property on County Road 1, just because it'll be easier rather than jumping around. And to tell you the truth, I've got about 9 or 10 questions, or short, concise questions. I don't think 3 minutes is going to be enough. Hopefully the commission will impose. I've been to most, if not all, the meetings that we've had on this plan. I'm not here to disagree with the plan. I'm here to understand it a little better. The county appraiser did a great job answering my first question on the property taxes. I want to be clear that I'm here, number one, because I want to protect my financial interest on my property on County Road 1. Number two, I want to make sure that the dollars that have been spent by the county and state get paid back as quickly as they possibly can with an efficient, concise, common sense plan. I've had the luxury to sit on master plan committees before in other cities. So I understand the ups and downs and the changes that we've had through this process, and I understand where we're at today. I'm going to ask, once again, now 8 questions. I don't know how you want me to proceed with this. I'm trying to do this because we've got a room full of people here that,
Why don't you ask your questions and we'll kind of deal with them. If we don't get it in time for your 3 minutes, then we can dwell on it as we go. So,
all right. Once again, the first one was the change of zone, how that was going to affect the property taxes. He did a great job on answering that. Is this plan going to actually change the zone on the property, or is it going to be like most master plans, a recommendation?
Yeah, this is the rezoning, so
So-
we'll change the
Rezoning.
zoning.
Has this commission ever had a rezoning request by anyone other than the property owner or representative of the property?
No, this is from the county. The county is doing this.
Right, but they're not the owners of the property. I'm saying the county is doing that on behalf of the property owners, I understand that, but the property owners, if there's a property owner here that requested a change of zone, just raise your hand. Okay, so if none of us as property owners have requested a change of zone, most master plans that I've seen, all master plans that I've seen, are a suggestion rather than an actual change of zone. I'm just stating that as a fact. And once again, my questions are not to be combative. My questions are to make this easy for all of us when we get before the Board of County Commissioners. Legally, can a government change zone on a piece of property without landowner's request? And if that request is made and you change a zone, and you've got a zoning requirements for that change of zone, and I'll use commercial, my piece of property as an example, and you don't have infrastructure there currently, you don't have sewers, you don't have water, you don't have natural gas, can then that be waived in this instance for the zone change requested by the county, not by the property owner?
Pause right there. It has been over 3 minutes. Do you want me to stop the timer?
what do you think, guys? It's our rules. so
I'm
we
sure,
can
I'm sure some guys here will give me their time if I.
They can take my 3 minutes.
Okay, that's fine, that's good. Okay.
I think we should just let you continue.
Yeah.
And not take anybody else's time, but let you
Too, so
continue.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be as efficient.
I don't want to break our rules either. so.
Yeah, I understand.
If the zoning is in fact changed, and this is recommended by you and approved by the Board of County Commissioners, and we're going to use, again, commercial as the zoning, can that zoning be downzoned to a lesser use without issue? I'm assuming Jeff has an answer to this.
That again is a process. You can request the rezoning and it goes to the planning commission and the board has to approve it. Yes, we
And-
can
and
definitely.
what would be staff's recommendation based on this plan with lesser uses?
Well, right now, the recommendation is what the land use plan says, because that's what the staff recommendation will be, and it goes to the planning board, and then it goes to the board for final approval.
So in other words, I've got a commercial piece, I've got commercial zoning on this tract that we're speaking of, and my sons want to build a couple single-family homes on there. You're not going to recommend for approval of that?
We just have to recommend what's on the land use plan, but it's up to the board. I mean, they can change it.
I don't like dancing around the tree. Will you or will you not recommend approval?
As staff, we don't have the authority to go against the land use plan that was approved by the board, so.
Okay.
we
Right.
cannot-
Okay, that's,
That, you got your answer, right?
yeah, that's okay, so,
Okay.
okay. Under today's current zoning regulations, you don't have a commercial zoning that any of my staff could find. You've got a business zoning, several classifications of business zoning. Is that correct, or did we?
We are actually taking all the planned commercial regulations forward. That'll be the next case.
Okay.
So we are creating those districts.
Well, if we're dealing with what we have today, you've got requirements under commercial or under business zoning that will assume apply to commercial zoning. Would those requirements be waived in this plan? Such as, you've got, part of your requirements, you've got to have the infrastructure to the property for me to rezone it. If I come in as landowner B somewhere else in the county and want to rezone another piece of property, commercial or business, and I don't have the infrastructure there, are you going to allow me to do that?
It depends on the comprehensive plan. If the comprehensive plan says it's commercial, then staff would recommend as commercial. And then it goes to the board and,
That's not the question I asked. The question I asked is, if the infrastructure was not in place to the property, as it is not in this entire corridor, or most of the corridor, would you recommend approval for a commercial zoning to go in without sewers, without water, without natural gas?
That's, at the time we have to look at it. I can't answer that question right now. It depends on the location.
Okay, fair enough. This is all a planned district. Everything that's being talked about here, we are going to be working at, you as a staff, planning staff, you as a planning commission, and the county commission, because whatever happens, we're going to have to come back with a particular use, and there's a lot of peril as an entire planned district for an entire corridor with no infrastructure. It's just something that you should certainly consider. That's a damn large planned district. Has anybody asked the state of Kansas, KDHE or KDOT, about access and with what we're dealing with today? Because KDOT's going to have input on access on this road. Am I right?
Yeah, we already have an access management plan for this corridor, so it's in place.
Okay. Where is that located at? I couldn't, I guys couldn't find it.
It was as part of the Special Development District guidelines. We can find that for you.
Okay. And then KDHE, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, with no sanitary sewers here, you're going to zone some light industrial all the way along south and along I-70 and to the north. What if KDHE comes in, you put this in your comprehensive plan, and they say, well, a lagoon system's not going to work here. Once again, these aren't hypothetical questions. These are questions that are going to be, you're going to run into this as a commission, probably in short order. Probably the biggest state statute that should be looked at here, and it's probably not this commission's job to do that. It's probably the Board of County Commissioners. But at some point, if you're going to circumvent requirements and rezone properties and then hold people's feet to the fire for the same requirements in different parts of the county that you didn't hold them to here, the state has a statute that's called a taking of a property. Your legal counsel's probably aware of it. So in other words, if they come in and I've got this commercial piece of property and I want to put a couple single-family homes in it, and I come and you deny that request of me doing that because I couldn't have a commercial use, I couldn't get a lagoon on a commercial use, whatever issue there may have been, you've now taken my property that you're telling me it's got to be commercial that I have no use for. And essentially what happens then is we all end up in a room that we don't want to end up with a guy in a black robe and he tells us all what the property's worth and somebody pays. I've been there 4 times, I can tell you that's the way it works. It's unfortunate, it's very unfortunate that you have to end up there. And I don't think anybody in this room wants to end up there, including me. It's just, I think if we could get a lot of this stuff answered, we could probably get a lot of people on board to support this thing if it made a little more sense to us. And there was a little more latitude for us as landowners rather than all the latitude being heavy towards the government side. Thank you for your time. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Well, we might bring you up later.
Okay.
We can do that. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition?
Good evening, my name is Mary Gerkes. I live at 21610 Kansas Avenue, Tonganoxie. I'm affected by this corridor, and as I have petitioned before in the preceding planning and zoning board meetings, county commissioner meetings, the Gerkes family is in opposition to this rezoning. We like the way our property is currently agriculture. I'm sure I have some other questions, but I just wanted to stand as an opposition to this entire plan and how it will affect our family and future community. We enjoy the agriculture, clean air, hear the birds. We're in opposition to all this rezoning stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Hi there, not necessarily in opposition, just questions. My name's Chris Chateau, I live at 15753 Chieftain Road. On the map, it looks like it's going to be mid-level residential rezone. Looking at the document here, it mentions sewage disposal, connection to public sanitary sewer is required under this zoning. Would that take effect immediately?
Oh, that's upon development of the property. So if you have a home there now that's on a sanitary, an
Septic's
on-site,
okay.
yeah, yes,
Well,
it's,
water's okay.
right.
All right. That's pretty much it for me then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? It's all right. You can both come up and form a line or something. Move it along a little bit.
I'm Lindsay Blanford. I live at 22800 Woodend Road, Kansas. I have the same concerns about the infrastructure. I kind of feel that we've been left out there. I feel that infrastructure was supposed to have been brought through years and years ago when the interchange was put in. And I see, there's clearly, there has to be a plan in place, and I just want to know when that plan is going to be reviewed and how quickly it's going to be put into place too, because I anticipate some people jumping on the rezoning and selling property and going through and moving forward, and so how does that leave the rest of us out there who are still on well water? That is exactly what we're on. There have already been oil wells that have been drilled out there and fracked, and yet still we're on well water out there. So I don't feel that there's no protection whatsoever going into where our water's coming from, and then the disposal of everything basically coming out south. So, again, like I said, I feel that there is a plan and that everybody else knows it, for me maybe. And I just wish it would get out there and be displayed and talked about.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. William Rudolph, 21502 Cantrell Road, Linwood. Some of my questions have been answered about the tax and the reason why obviously is proposed by the county to increase economic development. My questions are, who is going to be responsible for the jurisdiction that wants the development? Is it going to be annexed by Tonganoxie? Are they ready to take on that additional responsibility for fire, police, schools? If you're asking about a lot of homes being built there, I'm curious about who's going to claim that responsibility. Or is it going to be unincorporated and nobody's responsible, except the county's responsible for it? I'm not sure. More questions about the infrastructure is, is Tonganoxie growing at such a rate that it needs this room to expand? I'm not seeing that. If that's the case, is that the best use for the land? I understand that the interchange being built was a great asset for the area. Fully appreciate that, but I'm not sure that's what people who live there now would like to see done. My final question.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
I remember my other question, Mary Gerke. If we, as landowners, are in opposition to this rezoning, how do we take time to go around and get petitions signed so that the county commissioners and your zone and your board will know that there's, opposition? Or is this the only public hearing where we can say that we're in opposition? What's our recourse?
The county commissioners will meet on, looks like October the 16th, and they are the final decision. We're just a recommending body, and we'll recommend our decision to them. They will make the final decision, and you can speak at that meeting. That's correct, right?
Okay, then, is there time to do an opposition petition, or what recourse do we have?
I don't have anything in here about filing a petition for this, David.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening, Ms. Gerken. My name is David Van Paris. I'm the county counselor. I will tell you this, the Board of County Commissioners takes these things very seriously. They will have a public hearing similar to this. Theirs will be in the morning, most likely, in this very same room. Prior to that time, if I could offer any advice, and Don in particular, if you folks have questions, send them up to planning and zoning. I'll end up with them, but we'd like to answer them for you folks. I know I'd want my answers questioned if I was in that block of land. So I'd encourage you to do that. If you're opposed to it, Ms. Gerken, email the Board of County Commissioners, their websites, well, their address is shown on the website. What I think works better than an email, a letter. Any letters that you folks send up to this board goes into the record. They're not read and tossed. They become a part of the permanent record. That is the best thing that you can send up. It gives you the opportunity to take the time to spell out your position. It is read, at least I more or less browbeat the commissioners into making sure they read everything that's in that file. So do that. I'm always amazed how few letters we get from people who are directly impacted by these types of things. Now, I'm not trying to drum up work for them to do, but I think everyone would rather hear your concerns now when the door's open for you to express those concerns than just have them unanswered, and years from now, we have to kind of revisit the whole process. Regardless of what's decided here tonight or in front of the board, it's not absolutely permanent. If it's rezoned category X, and you own that property and you have a different idea to use that property, and it's beneficial to you, it doesn't harm your neighbors, and it would require a rezoning, ask for it. The same process that's being gone through here this evening can be done in the future as well. This is, I think, it's a plan. It's a little more than a master plan, but it's just a plan, so it can be changed. But the only way it'll ever get changed now or in the future is if we hear from you. So I'd really encourage you, if you don't have the addresses, planning 300 Walnut, it'll get delivered, and the board will read it, and it'll be part of the record. So I really urge you to take advantage of that.
So a petition would not help this case?
Ma'am, there's not a legal form for a petition. You could get a list, and then we've accept those, and I'll make sure it's put in the record. You can get anybody opposed to it, get their name and address, but more than just a signature on a petition that says, I'm against this, a letter expressing your concerns. Don had 8 questions. Send them up. If you have 8 questions, send them up. Most likely they'll be largely the same. but we'd like to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
My name's Rick Baker. I'm here on behalf of my uncle who lives in Alabama. And he owns the property south of I-70, the second farm down, James Baker. But I got two questions. The one, he received a letter this week that they changed his zoning requirement from light industrial to residential. And then at the kicker part of the deal, at the top of the piece of paper, it had $300 for the change order.
No, sorry. So Mr. Baker called us, and he is located in the RR40 zoning district. Mr. Baker had actually called us and wanted to know what the process would be for requesting a higher zoning, like industrial or commercial or something of that nature. He asked that we send him the application, so we sent him the application, and I put a note, there's a $300 application fee for the rezoning. So that's,
So he wants it more dense than
He wants industrial. I mean, he wants to sell.
his property is primarily in the floodplain,
Yeah.
which is why.
And my second question, and I've kind of been thinking about this, of all the maps you guys got, do we have a map that shows the people for it and against it?
Well,
I mean, do we care? I mean,
well, we
because I think
care,
the
we
map's
wouldn't
gonna
be,
be unbelievable.
wouldn't be allowing him to talk if we didn't care, but no, there is no map, no such map of.
What do you guys think the percentage is of the whole County Road 1 of people against it or for it?
I mean, through the county, for the whole county?
For the whole county?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, I have no idea, and I don't want to hazard a guess, but I would say, since we invested a lot of money in this project, I would think a lot of people would kind of like it.
I think that's what
I can't tell. I mean,
But that's all I got to say. But it is going to be $300.
Yeah, the application fee is $300.
anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Opposition.
Hi, my name is Ann Rockoff. I'm at 21060 Loring Road in Linwood, so I am just barely outside the redevelopment zone. I am concerned, I won't say necessarily I'm opposed to it at this moment, but I am concerned about some issues such as the one raised earlier regarding the taking of property and how quickly the rezoning might happen and whether or not those landowners want their zoning designation changed. I do think it does potentially raise a legal issue. And if landowners in this zone are being treated differently than somebody with a zoning issue elsewhere in the county, these are all issues that I'm not very clear on. I did wonder what the demand for this was. I understand the necessity for long-term planning. Are you seeing lots of interest in industrial businesses that would want to locate there? Is there a lot of interest from developers? Do you anticipate seeing a lot of this happening in a pretty quick manner? Or is this just a long-term, we need to have it on the books?
No, we don't have any interest in this area. It's just that the county wanted the future developers to we want to make it easier for them to go through the process. So instead of coming in for a rezoning for each individual parcel, this is a more convenient way of doing it. It's done once and then it's done. That's the reason.
And then my last question is, my understanding was that the development area along County Road 1 extends all the way down to Highway 32. Is that?
Yeah, that zoning,
So what
there is no
what is
change.
between Cantrell and 32? There's no change. to
There is
that
no
area?
change, so it's 5-acre zoning.
I am concerned that the voices of the landowners that are directly affected by this be heard and listened to. So very concerned, if not necessarily opposed.
We did go through the public hearings during the
I
land
know.
use planning process.
Yeah, I know, and
Several meetings.
I was grateful to have those, and I was glad to be able to attend those. So I do appreciate the openness of the process, but I think now that we come to making final recommendations, I hope that the rights and the concerns of the landowners who live on those little colored blocks
are fully taken into
Definitely.
account.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Rick Kuchar, we got the property at Kansas Avenue, 2440. I just have a question, if somebody was to develop one of these after you guys have changed the zoning, who's going to have to pay to get the infrastructure out
Well,
there? It's not there now. It's the city or
That-
county goes ahead and run it
Yeah,
out
that's
there,
something the
then?
county and the developer has to work.
Or
yeah.
is the landowner going to have to?
I mean, whoever is the applicant is.
The applicant who's
It
wanting
sounds to
to
me like
change.
that's all you're after is,
Yeah.
once you change this, then the applicant's going to be in charge of getting the infrastructure out there.
Yeah,
If there's a
We're
development, I
developing.
mean, if you're proposing something, yes, I mean, you're impacting the
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah. And it's not even close right now.
No, this is just a start.
No, I mean the infrastructure, no.
No, there's no infrastructure
No,
planned
not
at
this
this time, is it?
Right.
I don't know about Tonganoxie, but I don't think the
They're
county.
working on it. They
They're
have a-
working on it, yeah.
So that dollar amount's going to be substantial.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition?
My name is Mike Drake. I'm concerned with the property at 16347 Chieftain Road. It's actually on the west side of 2440. So it doesn't really have anything to do with, as far as I'm concerned, County Road 1 area itself. I can see County Road 1 area coming up to the east side of 2440, but to proceed on the west side of it seems a little extravagant to me. The rural water district, they've questioned people all the way from Reno up to the trailer court to the south of Tonganoxie, and there is no interest in any water being supplied to those people that are currently there. So they've canceled any idea or any plans of bringing water in there. Let's see, what else we got? The sewer system, Tonga's having trouble struggling to keep up with what they've got now. And I don't know where the sewer's gonna come from to support all of this, but if it's coming from Tongi, then you're talking 3 miles just to my place from Tonganoxie. The zone line is a high-density area. You're passing over a lot of low-density areas to get to my high-density zone. I just don't understand why would you jump that far to get to high density? And then on the west side of 2440, just, I'm not understanding it. Then if the property is sold, which right now it's actually in my mom's name in her trust, I'm trustee of that. When she dies, then what will happen to it? Is that going to limit, because it's in a high-density area, does that limit the number of people or the people that will buy it? Is the high density going to be the only group of people that I can sell to that is going to put 11 units per acre on the property? That's really all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition?
Thank you for your time. My name is Christy Cruz. I live at 21777 Cantrell Road, and our property is affected by this. Just to kind of reiterate what others have said, I kind of felt like this was going to be a master plan. I was very surprised to see that you're planning to actually rezone everything without, the request of the landowner. It seems like you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. With infrastructure and a lot of other things like that, $300 application fee, do we have to pay that?
No.
If it's being rezoned without our
It's only if you request a rezoning.
That seems a little backwards a little bit, but the industrial area in the public hearings before, while this was being developed, I had always seen it listed as light industrial, and now it's listed as industrial. What is the difference?
And so we have a second case after this. It's still light industrial uses. So, yeah.
The second case being that, is it? a change
The
of-
regulations that would go with each of the zoning districts.
Okay, so because what we were sent on the map said industrial, but it will.
Right, so it's a
but
planned
proposed to be-
industrial, but yes, in light industrial type uses, not heavy industrial.
Okay, thank you. I mean, because I'm okay with what my land is being rezoned as, but some of these other folks, I would be pretty hopping if all of a sudden I owned industrial land and didn't want it. So, thank you for your time. I'm in opposition to the rezoning.
Thank you.
Case roll.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
My name is B.A. Skeeton, and I live on 15731 222nd Street, across from the Tyson plant. Can't tell you how strongly I'm opposed to this rezoning. I think you guys need to take a real long look at what you're doing out there. One of these days, you might wake up and wonder what we're going to eat, or where it's going to come from. Blacktopping and covering everything up with cement. That's all I gotta say, but I want to say again, I'm strongly opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition to this request? Think of something else?
I remember what I thought before. William Rudolph again. My question was, and I got to drive up here from Linwood and got on interchange, came down to Highway 7, came north. As I'm driving up Highway 7 there, I'm thinking about what type of environment I'm driving through and how the constant stoplights and the traffic takes forever. That is basically what you're going to develop here, is the same kind of setting. Is that you're going to have high traffic, stoplights after stoplight. It's going to take forever for people to get anywhere in that part of the county. My question is, why isn't there a different plan to develop better infrastructure for movement of people in the county, instead of just build the highway and then start building stuff along the highway and clog it up and everything slows down? There doesn't be much of a plan to have good infrastructure to move people from one part of the county to another to enhance the county.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
One more thing. I have to reply to the statement about us being sent if we wanted water out there or not. All of us were sent if we wanted to take part in our district. I don't want to pay $5,000 for water when I have a well that is just fine, nothing wrong with it. And never did I dream I was going to be butted up next to a high, heavy industrial plot of land. Otherwise, I would have said, probably sign me up just to save my health.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Is there any additional information to be presented?
I think at this time, Chairman.
Okay, the public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Are any questions or comments, commissioners? Yes. David, you had heard some legal questions. Did you jot any of them down? And do you have any opinion?
Well, I'm going to give my general answer to any legal question. It depends. Don, what do you think your attorney would say? Here are some main points, I think, that I would hope you folks take away from this. As far as taxes, and I know, well, Mr. Weber left, but I hope you find Kansas tax law as confusing as I do. 'Cause don't want to think I'm that far below the average. But in any event, use controls your taxes. Use, not category, not how it's rezoned, no, quite frankly, nothing. It's how your property is used. If it's a single-family house, it's going to pay taxes on single-family residential. If it's farm ground, Mr. Skeet, it's going to remain farm ground. It's only when it changes that you get to deal with the nice people from the state that we get to house across the hall. And then you'll have to deal with that. But until that time, if the use doesn't change, taxes or the category of taxation unit remains the same. This rezoning does not force you to change the use of your property. I can't tell you it won't affect how somebody in the future might be able to use that property, or even yourselves. But generally, zoning restricts uses. When something is zoned industrial, the idea is to put industrial uses in that area, not just willy-nilly. Doesn't mean there will be an industrial use in it. It could be far less intensive than that. But again, this is just a plan. Now, there's one thing that's been brought up a couple of times, and it's a $300 fee. If you come to the county and you live elsewhere than this area, and you want to have your property rezoned, you're going to be charged a $300 fee. Well, I want y'all to think about this. If you disagree with that zoning category of your property up there, now's your opportunity to ask the county to change that, and you don't pay the $300 fee. It's a window of opportunity for you to use. So study this. If for some reason I know most of you folks are against this, and I fully understand that. But if you look at the map and your property, you would prefer to have another zoning category. I can't say it will change, but now's your opportunity to ask for that, and you don't pay the $300 fee. So take advantage of that as well.
I want to make sure I understand it. So if you live in the planned industrial, for example, and you don't want it classified that way, say you have 10 acres or something, and it's, or 20 acres and it's agricultural, you can come in and say, I want to keep it agricultural, and it'll stay that way?
Commissioner Barkowski, you can ask that it be considered for that. There's no guarantee if you pay the $300, your property is going to be rezoned to what you want it. It's just an application fee. But this is your window. If you don't like what's on that plan, and you can suggest another zoning use, now's the time to do it.
And it could continue to be used as agriculture as
Right.
long as you have it. You do not have to change that. So even if it's zoned as industrial, if you run cattle or grow soybeans, or continue to do that.
So even if you sell your property to somebody else, family member or non-family member, as long as you keep using agricultural, that's fine.
Yes.
Nothing changes.
Absolutely.
Nothing changes unless they change.
Right.
They want to change it, or you sell it to somebody who wants to change it. So actually, you have control of your own property. If you don't ever want it to change, never sell it. If you want it to change, sell it to somebody who wants to build something on it different than what's there already. So, if I'm mistaken, I hope one of you two will correct me
Yeah,
on that.
no, absolutely. As long as you continue to use it for agricultural uses, it will remain being used. Again, if you sell it, or your child inherits it, and they say, I don't want to do this, I want to do something else, at that point, they could come in and say, what can I do with this property other than agriculture? And we'd go through the list. And then as far as the infrastructure and such goes, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, right? And part of that is a public-private partnership, and development spurs infrastructure development along with it. We're aware that there's not much infrastructure down there, but as things develop, the infrastructure will come with it, and largely that will be at the cost to the developer, not the property owner who owns it now, the person who comes in and says, I want to develop this land.
And that's how almost all the development
Yes.
in the county happens.
Everywhere,
Right.
everywhere.
And we've had a couple
Leavenworth, and I believe Leavenworth County, Leavenworth City of Leavenworth, and it's still sitting vacant.
Yeah.
On
I
Eisenhower.
mean, nothing
Just
happens.
because you have the infrastructure doesn't
Right.
mean it's gonna come. So,
It doesn't matter what anybody wants to do with it, if they don't have the infrastructure to do it,
right.
they can't do it, and it doesn't matter what they want to do with it, and so they either have to bring it there or work out some kind of arrangement with, to get it there,
And like Mr. Van Peer said, they can come to our office and ask questions anytime they want, so we are open to it.
Okay, I have one question too.
Go
What
ahead
is,
and ask. That's
what is
where
the
we're at.
zoning currently on all of this?
The majority of it, it's residential zoning. The majority of it is 5-acre zoning, I believe, but let's pull it up here, and we'll just double check. Yeah, so the vast majority of it is the lighter green is 5-acre minimum zoning, and the darker green is 2.5. So it's primarily rural residential, 5-acre zoning.
Just to give you a little history, we have new members at the Planning Commission. We recently went through the land use planning process for this corridor. That's when we, designated certain areas as industrial, commercial. That came out of the land use planning process. We had public meetings. I think we had like 3 or 4 public meetings on this, and this is what came out of it.
So currently, if someone wants to put something industrial in, they would have to come before planning and zoning and ask for it.
Yeah, they have to apply for a rezoning, and it comes before you all, and then it goes to the Board of County Commission for final approval.
Okay, the way I'm thinking about this, if this does happen, and the infrastructure, as the infrastructure's not here now, in fact, it could be to the advantage of the property owners along there because infrastructure will be developed that they don't have now. For example, the water issues, that if someone comes in, a developer comes in, rural water district can't handle it, they have to come up with water some way that then residents could tie into.
The same with
'Cause-
sewer, yeah.
Yeah, they won't do anything right now because there is no density. Once you bring the density in, that's when they come in with the infrastructure.
and it's the same way with all utilities. I mean, if a business comes in that needs to get natural gas will have to come. They'll bring it, and everybody would have the advantage of being able to hook into it.
Right.
Same thing with sewers, water, electricity, everything that's brought in would be available for anybody it runs across their property or by their property. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion, and remember, we need to recite the golden regulations in any motion you make. You need to address.
Can I say something before the motion is made? Okay. When I first looked at this, I looked at the map and I also looked at the next case coming up. And it was explained to me that the county, what we're seeing as far as zoning was what was on the map that the county approved when it came to Plan A or Plan B. What we're doing now is we're getting it in our regulations, so then that way we can go ahead and build the categories. And what I mean by the categories are there's different zoning, the plan, low density in that, then it's got the uses. This way we'll be able to set the uses, because right now there is no uses within those categories. But first you have to get what's there on the map in, and then you go to this chart and you go back and get the uses that you want to apply for that area. And that's the way it was explained to me, so.
It's true.
Article 19.
I'll entertain a motion. Yep, those are it.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to approve case number 19-084.
Three,
I'm sorry, 83. With the following conditions or factors to be considered. Number one, character of the neighborhood. Do you want the whole thing read or just brief or something? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, you can, if you would like, read the entirety of those. You can also adopt them by reference, and the appropriate reference would be pages, the factors to be considered as set forth in the staff report dated September 25th, 2019 on pages 1 and 2, unless you wish to read them for everybody's enjoyment this evening.
I think they've already been read once, right? So.
Okay. Again, I recommend approval based on the factors pointed out by staff and as appeared on page 1 and 2, and has previously been presented in detail to each one to be addressed.
Second.
Second. Have a motion on the floor with the second to approve case number DEV 19-083 with staff recommendations and considering the golden factors on page 1 and 2 of the report. Is there any further discussion? Now we have a roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Terry Burkowski.
Yes.
John Matthews.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries 6-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item on 9 a.m. on October 16th, 2019. And it's going to be in the same place. So send your letters of concern. Come to the meeting. Okay, case number DB 19-084, consideration application for a text amendment to amend Article 4, Article 19A, Article 18B, Article 18C, Article 18D, Article 18E, Article 18F, and Article 18G of the Leavenworth County Zoning and Subdivision Regulations. Request submitted by the Planning and Zoning staff. This does require a public hearing. Please, staff report.
Commissioner, this is case number DEV-19-087. It's a proposed amendment to the Leavenworth County Zoning and Subdivision Regulations. As you said, we are talking about amending Article 4 and adding Article 18. Article 18 currently does not exist. The change to Article 4 is simply to add these zoning districts to the growth management established of planned development districts in Article 4, which is where all of our zoning districts are briefly spelled out. Articles 18A through 18G, I will briefly go through. If you have any questions, you have the proposed text amendments in front of you. If you have any questions, just stop me and we can stop and talk about it. So Article 18A is PR1, which is planned low-density residential. Generally, we're talking about minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, not feet, square feet, and generally a density of 4 units per acre, road frontage requirements of 72 feet. Article 18B is planned residential 2, or PR2, excuse me, planned medium density residential. Generally lot sizes of 6,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet per dwelling unit for two-family residential developments. So typically we're talking about single family and duplexes or townhomes, that sort of thing. typically 7.2 units per acre. Article 18C, PR3, is planned high-density residential, generally 11.61 units per acre. This would be your apartment complexes, heavier density of residential districts. There are some height regulations and such through here because we're talking about apartment buildings. We're not looking for any Trump towers or anything out there. Article 18D is mixed planned use land districts. Planned developments that include a mixture of residential, retail, office, cultural uses, and light industrial in a single structure or multiple structures, and that incorporate a coordinated, consistent theme throughout the development in its pedestrian and vehicular access and ways. Each mixed-use land development shall include a mix of 2 or more uses, multifamily, residential, and/or commercial use, and/or light industrial use. And again, these are planned districts. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so they would be required to bring in a site plan. That's what planned means. You have to bring in a site plan and show us what you're going to do, show us what the looks of the buildings are going to be, where's the parking going to be, the roadways, and then obviously, again, the location of the buildings. And those regulations will also end up coming forward to you, what the requirements for each of those districts is going to be. So that's what we talk about when we say planned. It has to be kind of a uniform look and feel throughout the area as opposed to just chaotic. PC, Article 18E, is planned commercial district. Planned commercial would obviously have commercial type uses in it. Again, the site plan requirement would come into play. Planned industrial, typically we're talking about light industrial uses, not heavy industrial uses. Again, it would be planned. And then Article 18G is the grandfathering and exceptions, which by and large talks very much about if it's currently used as a single-family residence or as an agricultural parcel, it can continue to be used as that. It's just once the use changes. And you have to come to us to change the use. We're not changing the use for you. And those are the regulations that we are proposing currently. We'll answer any questions that you may have, and it's a public hearing item.
What's the difference between light industry and heavy industry?
So if you look in Article 19 of your zoning and subdivision uses, things that are considered to be a lighter industrial use would maybe be like an undertaker, mortuary. That's the first one I came to. So, a warehouse, someplace like UPS would be considered light or medium. Your heavy industrial uses, those are things like meat rendering and, match manufacturing, wood pulp and fiber reduction and processing. Those are your heavy, gross industrial things that are required for society, don't get me wrong, but not things we necessarily are looking at. Aluminum powder and paint manufacturing, blast furnaces, those are heavy industrial uses. A lighter industrial use would be, processing and canning of fruits, vegetables, poultry. I shouldn't have said poultry, that was bad.
Tyson's?
Yeah, that's not what I mean, I'm saying.
Is that light industry?
No. So the packaging of those things. So those are some differences.
And then I have a question on the grandfathering. It has to be less than 10 acres.
So when we had the special development district regulations that came in accordance with the original County Road 1, you had to come in with 10 acre. If you wanted to divide your property, it had to be a minimum of 10 acres and you had to get permission from the board and such. So we're saying if you have a home that's on less than, maybe you had a home site that was there before the special development district regulations went in, and it was on 2.5 acres, and something happens to that, we're saying it's grandfathered in, you'd be able to rebuild it, you would not have to convert your use.
What if it was on 20 acres?
What if it was on
20
20 acres? I don't know.
20 acres is illegal stuff.
Yeah, it's, there's
it's
no
automatic.
change if it's.
Yeah, that doesn't change.
So this is just things under 10 acres?
Yeah, if it's under 10 acres and the house burns down.
Yeah.
So
understand
this
that.
would provide them with the ability to build a house, so it's grandfathered in.
Right.
Okay.
The planned districts they need to be planned 10 acres at a time.
Okay.
So if you didn't fall under that.
Okay, then the special use permit and temporary use permit, proposed development within the planned district shall contain not less than 10 acres.
Yeah, we still allow the special use permits and temporary special use permit within this district. So there is they can still apply for a special use permit.
Right, so it says that's the regulation, but there's an exception.
This is the grandfathering clause, so.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, even if
there
you
was
don't-
more than 10
Yeah,
that they wanted to rebuild.
no, even if you don't have 10 acres, you can still apply for a special use permit. That's what it says.
Well, it means to replace as was.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I've got at least one question. Under Article 18, the P1 Planned Industrial District, says the regulations set forth in this article or set forth elsewhere in this resolution are district regulations and planned industrial. It says any building or premises shall be used only for the following purposes. It says any use permitted in the P1 Planned Industrial, except that no residential use. It basically says it'll be permitted. That's the only category out of all of them where it says all the uses are permitted, except for residential. Am I reading that wrong?
No, so typically your zoning districts are a pyramid, right? So
Okay.
you can do lower usage, if you have your highest zoning district, but you want to do a lower use, you can do that, but we would not want residential, we wouldn't want a residential development
And I
to go
understand it.
in.
My concern is, are we going to be able to pick and choose what goes in that, when we go back to this chart? Are we going to be able to pick what goes in that planned industrial?
That's what happens. The next step is we'll create the table of uses, and then that's the work session.
Okay.
That you're meeting for. That time, we can discuss all those items that.
So that means after we go ahead and go through the chart, pick what goes in that?
We'll
Okay.
prepare all that and bring it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we had a voice in it as far as making sure what went in that category.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions of the staff? Okay, upon opening the public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition will give your name and address each time you begin to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. We will now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in favor of this request. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this request?
Joe Herring, surveying through a little bit. More clarification, we have some new uses up there, PC, planned commercial, planned mixed land, and kind of back to Rocky where it says any use except residential, kind of opens it back up to all industrial. Without table uses, and Jeff, you just touched on it, and my question's been, this is going before this panel without a table of use in front of it. Will that table of use be created prior to going to the Board of County Commissioners on 16?
No, actually, this is like the first step. The table of uses comes last because we have to get this approved so we can look at all the uses, and we'll have a work session and decide which uses goes to which categories. Even if this gets approved, we're not going to allow any of those uses to go in unless we have a table of uses. So nothing's going to happen even if this gets approved. We have to get this approved before we can create all those uses in those categories.
Establishing
So that's
the
the
districts.
That's the next step. We're not going to allow anything to happen unless we have the table of uses.
So this will come back to the Planning Commission in a public hearing with the table of uses.
With the table of uses.
So tonight, the the residents accept it to become plan commission, plan commercial, plan mixed use, without knowing what their uses are.
Again, the table of uses is a public hearing.
Right,
They
so
can-
when they
they
come
can
back
look
and
at-
they say, we didn't want them uses, we wanted
Then
different uses.
Board can.
Now they have to opt to go back through rezoning. To me, it kind of seems.
No, then we can change the uses. I mean, if somebody
can change
doesn't,
the
yeah.
uses, like right
That's-
now.
That's what, that's a separate section.
So during the planning commission, during this level, the residents, if they don't like the use, if it's in their category, wants a different use in it, they can request that. Much like
Yeah, it's a
Dave
public
said
hearing.
over there, and no fee, or no rezoning fee, now's the time to ask for a reason, a different. zoning
At that time, they don't
classification.
have to ask for rezoning, they can ask the board to consider not to allow that use within that
Not to
category.
allow that use, or to allow a certain use, so it's another step, so, I don't know. if
That's
they
the
were
next
aware of
step,
that,
yeah.
That there will be another step.
Yeah, we'll
And
be
that
no-
was my concern.
Yeah, that we approve, you guys, you as a panel approve zoning without knowing what is gonna be allowed in there.
That's the next step, and there'll be a public hearing on
Sounds
that.
like it should have been all at once, but that's just, it's viewed a little different, I guess. That's why I'm concerned, just for
I guess
clarification.
cart before the horse, which comes first. You
Yeah,
have to
which-
have the zoning
yeah.
before you can plan what's in
Yeah,
it.
it should have been presented, hey, we're gonna go commercial, and here's gonna be what we propose to go into commercial. Since it didn't exist, it's kind of like a blank zoning category right now. And specifically, some of my clients are zoned commercial, and it's like, what are they gonna allow us to put in? They can only assume it's a business, B1, B3
Right,
classification.
be
It'll
talking
be in
general business,
that,
yeah.
But assumptions, sometimes don't turn out that way. So just for clarification.
What do they make?
It's coming.
What do they make?
I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this request? In favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this request? In opposition? Is there any additional information to be presented?
Nothing more at this time, Chairman.
The public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Are there any comments or questions, commissioners?
I have just one question for staff, and it's more just for my knowledge moving forward if anything else. Because I have the same kind of questions that Mr. Herring had. Why didn't we hear this one first, this case first, before we heard the reason?
Well, first we have to establish the zoning on a map. That's how we establish zoning, with the boundaries, and then you create regulations for that. So that's why this is the second step, and then the table of uses will be the third step.
Okay. I understand all the table of uses and everything, but we approved a rezone with zoning that didn't really exist.
Yeah, without the zoning districts, we don't have regulations. So once we establish the zoning on a map with the boundaries, then we create regulations for that, so.
So what you're saying is, as we establish the zoning with the first case, even if we approve this with nothing in the category,
Yeah,
we
because-
really, they can't do anything.
Right.
Yeah, we
They
don't
can't
have
do
zoning,
anything.
yeah.
But I think as what Joe mentioned too, I think a lot of people probably didn't understand that were in here earlier.
Right. First, you have to have the zoning to establish what they are.
Yeah, we need the zoning
And-
map first before we
Yeah,
can
And now
create
we need to
regulations.
establish the uses on that.
So right now, until that's established, this basically stays zoned as is.
No, the zoning, you already recommended the approval of the zoning.
Yeah.
What happens is if something comes in within this period, say somebody wants to build a hotel or something, we would hold off on that until we establish the table of uses.
Which we're busy working on.
And if it's table of uses doesn't fit what somebody wants to do, they can always apply for a variance.
Right. Once the uses are approved. we
Yeah,
approve
once
them,
the
right?
uses are approved, is that right?
Not a variance, but they can come before you and ask you to change it, or
Change it, it wouldn't be a variance, it would be a change?
it'll be a change in the regulations itself.
Oh, okay.
I think we've done that.
Yeah,
before.
Yeah, we
Text
have,
them.
yeah. Oh, yeah, we've done that several times.
How soon can we expect to see that table of uses?
It'll be next month.
Well, we have our,
November.
Yeah, October, we are having the work session on it.
yeah. Weren't we already having a work session in October with the county commissioners?
I don't know if that's gonna happen or not. That will-
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
Because
we're
we're
having
still-
a work session anyway.
Yeah, we're still working on that private road.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Then I just also want to know, 18G was the one that grandfathered all the existing uses in, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
18Gs.
Yeah,
It's right in front of you.
yeah, right here.
Yep. Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I entertain a motion, and remember the golden factors. Where are they on this one?
Yeah, they're not listed.
There are
There
not
are none
golden
on
factors
this one.
on regulation
Okay.
changes.
You say you'd entertain a motion?
I will entertain a
Okay.
motion.
Chairman, I'd like to recommend approval of case number DEV 19-084, proposed amendment to the 2006 Leavenworth County zoning subdivision regulations to the Board of County Commissioners with findings and facts
I'll second.
from staff,
Okay, John Matthews, second. Okay, we have a motion on the floor with a second to approve case number DEV 19-084, application for a text amendment for Article 4, Article, and establishing Article 18A, 18B, 18C, 18D, 18E, 18F, and 18G. Is there any further discussion? A roll call vote. Mark Denny.
Yes.
Terry Bukowski.
Yes.
John Matthews.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Rocky Hempel.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries 6-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item at 9 a.m. on October 16th in the Leavenworth County Courthouse, again, right here, same place. Is there anything else? We are adjourned.